1 month from today, actual presidential voting will begin at the Iowa caucuses. And by the end of 2016, Americans will elect a new president. But we still have miles to go in this campaign, and we have an ace political panel this morning to guide us. Face the Nation host John Dickerson is also CBS News political director. Wall Street Journal columnist Peggy Noonan is a CBS News contributor and the author of memoir, The Time of Our Lives. Nancy Cordes has traveled the country covering the campaign for CBS News. Welcome to all of you on this New Year's Day. Let me just begin and ask Peggy, what does this signify now that we've gone to a new year in the politics and this race to be the next president?
It means things finally get really and substantially exciting. We are right now going from the past 18 months where everybody said, I got a gut feeling and I think this is going to happen. There's a new poll, da-da-da. Now things are really going to happen. The voters are going to get together. There's really going to be caucuses in Iowa. New Hampshire's going to vote soon after. We are actually going to find out if the Donald Trump phenomenon is real and lasting. And if it is not, we're going to find out what's coming up and who's going to take this thing over.
Nancy, February 1st is Iowa. February 9th is New Hampshire. This is the latest these caucuses and primaries have been in 20 years. What does that mean?
It means that not only is the presidential race kind of frozen until we see what happens with Donald Trump, if he can maintain this lead, but also races below the presidential election are frozen as well, because Senate Republican candidates, for example, House Republican candidates are all waiting to see how they are going to run their races. And the interesting thing is that you ask any Republican leader, any Republican strategist, the wisest Republicans there are, and they have no idea what is going to happen. We've never seen anything like this before, so they don't know if Trump's lead will entirely disappear when folks in Iowa and New Hampshire head to the polls.
And John, hasn't some of the polling out of Iowa, in fact, shown that there's extreme fluidity in the race?
You know, there always is. So the cliche about Iowa is organize, 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 and get hot at the end. We are at the end now. We are in the moment of excitement for underdogs, because this is what they've been saying. They said, after the new year, then my moment will come as the voters, as you say, Nora, being very fluid, will turn to me when they're going to pick a president. And that's happened in the past. Remember, Rick Santorum out of nowhere to win the Iowa caucuses. The challenge, of course, though, for that underdog, particularly with Iowa, is the last two winners of the Iowa caucus have not gone on. And that's happened, in fact, before. George Bush won it, didn't go on. Bob Dole won it, didn't go on in '88. So, but anyway, it's the chance for somebody who's not gotten the love to finally get the love with the voters and maybe build something and get a spark to continue on.
But it's suggesting on the Democratic side, we have seen surprises of Barack Obama in 2008 and John Kerry in 2004, a late starter who was organized and was able to kick off the momentum then.
John Kerry, the patron saint of long shot candidates, because all of those Republicans who've been at 1 or 2 or 3 in the polls will say, no, I'm like, and they won't say this out loud, but they'll say, I would like to be like John Kerry, who was at about 3 or 4% in the polls, and then in part because his rivals went after each other, he rose when they fell, and that is the hope of a lot of those Republican candidates.
The other interesting thing that concerns me is when we get to the conventions, if in fact it is Hillary Clinton, who will she choose as a running mate? And if in fact she is the nominee, will the Republicans feel like they have to choose a woman as a running mate?
I don't know. I'm not hearing that among conservatives and Republicans. I remember the dream team was Marco Rubio of Florida and John Kasich of Ohio. It was like Florida and Ohio. Oh my gosh, put that together. I'm not sure they will feel that they have to have a woman, but I am sure that conversation will come up. Why wouldn't it? And there's a lot of good women to choose from there.
Who are those Republican women that would be at the top of the list?
I think the first person you will have to think of is Carly Fiorina, who is not huge in the polls right now, but who's made a rather valiant try, and who is on some level won some of the heart, I think, of the party. So she would certainly be first consideration.
I would think somebody.
I would think Nikki Haley. I would think Governor Martinez. I think there's a whole Kelly Ayotte. There's kind of, you got a bench there if that's what you want to do, and there's a lot of reasons they would want to.
Can we look at this day and figure out what the great debate's going to be about for America in 2016?
I think you have to assume it's going to be a mix of economy and foreign policy. You know, in 2008, obviously, it was the economy, and that really helped Barack Obama. But I think we're going to see this ping-ponging back and forth over the course of the next year between economic concerns, and then when something happens, hopefully it doesn't, but when we have terrible things happen either here at home or abroad, like San Bernardino, then that's going to come to the forefront. The interesting thing right now is that when you poll Republican voters and ask them, who do you think would be strongest on the economy, they say Donald Trump. And then when you ask them, who do you think would be strongest on foreign policy, they say Donald Trump. And so, at least for right now, he is sort of rising above everyone. And normally you would think, okay, well, he's got this huge lead. He's up by 15 points. Of course, he's going to do well in those primaries. But he doesn't really have a traditional organization. He doesn't have people, staffers working for him in these states, precinct captains, things like that. So let's make it, you don't know.
Yeah, draw the alternative narrative, John, which is that given that Republicans changed not only the number of debates this election cycle, they made less. They changed the primary schedule. They made it more compact. Right. How will that change and impact a potential Trump candidacy or others taking Trump out?
Well, if let's go to the fewer number of debates. If it's true that Donald Trump doesn't do as well in debates as he does in other venues because he's not as detail-oriented, and it's also an opportunity for lesser candidates who can't get his share of airtime to finally get in front of the voters, you would imagine for all non-Trump candidates they would want more debates, a chance for them to shine and take him down. So that's a way in which it's changed. I think another way, what will be interesting to watch is, you know, we're talking about the vice presidential pick. It is still possible that because of the way the delegates are proportioned, and if the field stays large enough, you could, and this is wishful thinking on the part of all political reporters, but you could have a situation where you get to a convention and the nominee is not decided. And so then you have an exciting situation the Republican Party hasn't had it since '76 with Reagan and Ford. You have a situation in which you go to Cleveland and we don't know.
There are people who've watched the unfolding in 2015, and they say that Ted Cruz really studied past presidential campaigns, has been a real student of it. Everybody, whether they like his politics or not, think he's a very bright guy. And the lessons he's learned in terms of organization, and also tactical restraint. We saw him stay away from Donald Trump in a lot of fights that he could have had. And that has worked well for him. So he had not only the organization, but also one of the things they tell candidates who have run before is that the thing they say they've learned is not to swing at every pitch, which is to say you need some discipline. And the fact that Cruz was able to stay out of a lot of those fights, stick to his work, that may be the thing that really benefited. Donald Trump was not in school that day, was he?
No. Yes, he swings at pitches, the umpire, the opposing team.
Anything. One of the amazing things about Trump is that discipline is exactly the word. When you get in and you start to win, you start to look like you're winning, you start to look like you're really possible. If you've got your head screwed on right, you develop discipline. You show respect for everybody by being disciplined. You can have colorful programs and colorful ideas, dramatic ones, but you put them forward in a thoughtful and we can talk about this way, and you're not unnecessarily insulting. It is amazing to me that Donald Trump has, or someone around him, hasn't forced him to exhibit the kind of discipline that a winner must have.
But who is that person who could do that? I don't know who that person could possibly be.
Nor did Donald Trump.
Well, maybe that's the answer, but I don't see how you do it without discipline. If it goes to the convention, a fight, a hand-to-hand fight on the convention floor is about discipline and having your troops. You really need it.
Peggy, thank you. John, Nancy, thank you so much.